Making sure you were ready. Don't start, okay. I call this February 27th meeting of the Newberry County Board of Trustees to order. We have a quorum present. Ms. Lake will be joining us in just a few minutes. She called me and she got detained a little bit, and she'll join us in executive session. Are there any amendments to our agenda?
Madam Chair, we have one amendment. We have the meeting location, it was incorrect. It was Newberry High School. Our meeting location is actually right here at the district office for the school district of Newberry County.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do I have a motion to move into executive session to discuss personnel resignations and recommendations, personnel matters, policy GCC, GBE, GBE-B, and GCF, and contractual considerations, HES, Little Mountain Elementary driveway expansion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll be back. Turn to open session. Mr. Ham, would you lead us in an invocation, please?
Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you for this crowd that we have tonight. We thank you for all the students that are here to be recognized, and we thank you for each student in our district. We ask you to be with us now as we make our decisions, make our decisions pleasing to you. We ask all this in the matchless name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we would like to welcome all of you here with us this evening. It is wonderful to be able to have a nice crowd in here again. And we'd like to recognize our media that is watching us, I believe, online. Is there any action from the executive session?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the administration's recommendations for hiring.
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Madam Chair, I also move to approve employees' request for an additional 30 days of sick leave to extend that to a total of 90 days.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
And at this time, our special recognition. Oh, we do?
Mr. Presley, if you'd come on down front, please, sir. Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Presley, tonight we begin our recognitions with our junior scholars. To qualify to become a junior scholar, an 8th grade student must take the PSAT and score 50 or higher in math, verbal, and/or writing. 7th grade students can also qualify as a junior scholar if they are identified by the Duke TIP program and are invited to attend the state or grand recognition, or both, as a 7th grader. 7th grade students identified are recognized during their 8th grade year. The following students are our district's 22-23 junior scholars. From Mid Carolina High School, Ashley Mid Carolina Middle School. Can't even read what I typed. Hudson DeFries, Wyatt Mazza, Landon Templin, and Jackson Wicker. Please stay up front and let us get a picture of everybody. Get a picture of our Mid Carolina Middle Junior Scholars. From Newberry Middle School, we have Wyatt Stewart. And from Whitmire Community School, we have Peyton Hayes. Congratulations to our 22-23 junior scholars. Tonight, we're also recognizing our junior Beta students. Thousands of middle school Beta students, members, let me start all over. Thousands of middle school Beta Club members competed from around the state in a wide variety of events. These winners have qualified to represent our district at the National Junior Beta Club Convention in Louisville, Kentucky. From Mid Carolina Middle School, Emily Oswald, first place on the science exam. Eden McCall, second place on site painting. Olivia Stuck, second place sculpture. Lillian Farmer, second place speech. Michaela Bryant and Grayson Sheely, third place duo dance performance. And do we have any of the sponsors for the Mid Carolina Middle Junior Beta Club here? We have Dr. Dobbins. You can come on up, Dr. Dobbins. Congratulations to these Mid Carolina Middle School students. From Newberry Middle School, also participating in the Junior Beta Convention, Jocelyn Perez, second place, Visual Arts. Landon Gray, third place in Speech. And do we have any of the Newberry Middle Junior Beta sponsors? Mr. Reed? And from Whitmire Community School, Peyton Hayes, first place in 8th grade language arts. Are any of the Whitmire Junior Beta? We got Miss Suber. Come on up, Miss Suber. Congratulations. Congratulations to our Junior Beta winners and good luck in the national competition. Tonight, we're also recognizing Mr. Quinn Curitan. Quinn here tonight? There you are. Mr. Curitan spent 4 years of loyal, dedicated service to the district, and we appreciate all that he did for our students and staff during his time as a school board member. Thank you again, Mr. Curitan.
All right, and at this time, I believe we have someone with us for public forum. But before we do that, if all of you folks that are here with us, if you would like to stay, we would love to have you, but if you would like to leave, we understand.
Mr. Templeton, your presence is requested. He did.
Good job.
And now we move to our public forum. And this evening, we have Mr. Bowers.
Yes.
And please keep your remarks to 3 minutes. And
yes, no problem.
Mr. Earl is our timekeeper over there, so.
Well, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. I've already done some correspondence with Mr. Presley, but I'm here tonight to talk to you about this thing that has invaded our country, it's invaded our state, it's invaded our cities, it's invaded our homes and our schools. That's fentanyl. And when I talk about homes, I'm talking about my home. I lost my son in August of this past year, fentanyl poisoning. So we're big advocates now to spread the word about how you say, it's better to have something like Narcan than to need it and not have it. And you know how that saying goes. Anyway, so I'm here today to say that we're here strongly to try to get Narcan more into schools. I know the resource officers have it, and I think you're working on the nurses to have it. But we really feel like school bus drivers need it to have it too, because they're out on a route, they're not near a resource officer, and they're not near a nurse or whatever. In Narcan, if you've ever experienced this, all it is just like nasal spray. And but we really feel like that's something that needs to be done. We've already talked to the Greenville County Schools. I'm a graduate of Newberry High School in 1977. That's why I'm here today, because this is my hometown. I think I know Mr. Jody Ham there. But anyway, so we're just trying to make sure that nobody goes through what we're going through right now. And if Narcan, we know it can save lives. I think y'all doing a great job. There are some things that I'll send to you later on that they're implementing in Greenville that unfortunately that we help them do. It's a great program. So anyway, we're just here to express our concerns about Narcan, and especially with bus drivers. We still got to get them up there thinking about that too. Time's up. 1 minute. That's all I wanted to say. I really appreciate y'all allowing us to be here, and hopefully we can make a difference in people's lives, and that's all we want to do. You know, we want to get that phone call one day and says, hey, what you've done helped save so-and-so. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowe.
Without objection, the January 23rd board meeting minutes and the January 30th, 2023 legislative breakfast special call board meeting minutes will be approved. And Ms. Lake, you are a legislative liaison. Do you have any legislative updates for
I
us
do,
this evening?
but I got four pages full of legislative updates, and so I'm not going to try to read them all now. So anybody who's interested and wants to know any bill that's pending before the House or the Senate now that has to do with education, if you'll email me, I'll be glad to send you a copy of those bills and tell you where they are. So I'm just going to hit on a few of them. The budget, the House Ways and Means Committee this past Thursday finalized its 23-24 budget. It now heads to the full House for debate beginning at noon on March the 13th. So, and I'm just going to hit just a few of the highlights of the funding packages that have been proposed in that packet. One of them is that they have $3 million in EIA revenue to increase teacher supply stipend from $300 to $350 per eligible teacher. They've got $17.3 million in the general fund revenue for an increase in bus driver base hourly rate. They have $30 million in the EIA non-recurring revenue for instructional material, $3 million in EIA revenue for computer science education, $2 million in EIA non-recurring revenue for startup costs to develop an education scholarship account. And that's something there that a lot of you have heard about, and that has to do with the vouchers. And right now, the way that it reads is that you're eligible for up to $6,000. It says at this point, the way that it's reading in the amendments that went through, and before I go that, they took out two provisions in the original amendment that where they can discriminate against religion and they can discriminate against disability. That, you know, just basically that if your child has some sort of disability, you want to go to a private school, that private school doesn't have to accept you, it doesn't have to accept that voucher money, where in a public school, every child gets educated regardless. There is $300,000 in EIA revenue for reading instruction,
1.8 million in EIA revenue for math resources and support, 15 million in EIA non-recurring revenue for high-intensity tutoring, 20.6 million in EIA non-recurring revenue for school buses, purchase or lease, and 42 million in EIA non-recurring revenue for literacy instruction program. The House is likely this week to consider a joint resolution. It's the House Bill 3591. And it's what it is. It's going to allow the voters to decide whether or not they want to repeal the provision, because there's a provision in state constitution now, in our state constitution, that says that we cannot use public funds to go directly or indirectly to benefit any religious or other private educational institution. So in the next general election in 2024, they're going to ask you a yes or no question. And it's going to read that Section 4, Article 11 of the Constitution of the state be repealed so as to eliminate the prohibition against the state or its political subdivisions providing direct aid to religious or other private educational institute. So whether you're for this or whether you're not for it, you need to give it careful consideration. The one thing in this voucher that a lot of the educational teachers in public schools and all, is that the money going to a private institution, as of right now, there's no mandates that they have to follow, no requirements like a public school has to follow. And then another bill that they're considering, it's before the Senate. It's a Senate Education Subcommittee. They'll meet on Wednesday to consider a bill to enact the Charter School Accountability Act, which is Senate Bill 126. And what it does is it sets a process for charter schools wishing to transfer from one authorizer to another and clarifies certain state laws that charter school must adhere to. And like I said, that there's a bunch of them. There is a bill, too, going before them now that the House has passed, and it's going to go to full committee, that will not allow any type of firearm on school grounds. Even if you have a concealed weapon, you would have to have the authority of somebody either in the law enforcement or the facility or building that you're entering. So even if you have a concealed permit, you're not going to be able to carry them in a school building or at a school athletic event.
That's what they're at.
And like I said, it's just a ton of them, and it would take too long to read. And I know everybody wants to get home, but if you're interested and you want to know everything that's before the Senate and the House now, I'll be glad to send you full copies of those.
That would be some nice light reading right there. May I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Does SCSBA give you that, or do you slog it out yourself?
Both.
Has SBA had any considerations of the ramifications of the restructuring bill for DHEC?
I haven't seen it in any of the material that you'd have to give me a specific bill on that.
There's a bill to restructure DHEC and put several state agencies kind of under one umbrella.
I do know that there's a bill for athletic trainers now which come under DHEC, and they're moving to move them to the Board of Medical Examiners. There's also a bill too there that, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if Newberry County does this, but apparently some schools don't allow sunscreen. And there's an actual bill, it's a Senate Bill 256, that states school districts may not prohibit the possession and personal use of sunscreen.
Do we do that?
We allow it, I've already said it.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Are we good? Okay, that moves us to action items. Dr. Carey, with our second reading of the school calendar.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Mr. Presley. I'm before you this evening for second reading of Draft 3 of the calendar, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
I guess mine's more of a comment. I mainly make it for all the people that have contacted me and specifically said they wanted early release days done away with, and I tried to talk to the board. There's just not enough board support for that right now. I have been told that we might shorten it to 4 in the next calendar year, 24, 25. Several people have mentioned to me that Jody had mentioned several times how broken January is, and I agree with him. We only have 16 days of instruction, but there again, not an easy thing to do. But I do think overall this is a better calendar than one that preceded us, because I like to break it before Christmas.
Thank you.
For the second 9 weeks. So I have come to understand that it's a lot harder work than waving a magic wand. So I'm okay with it. It's not perfect, but it's okay.
And we-
I'll make a motion that we accept this Draft 3 of the 2023-2024 district calendar for second reading.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That moves us to staff reports with Ms. Dowd.
Madam Chair, Mr. Presley, and members of the board, you should have a copy of the cash flow for the month of January 2023. You will see a corrected copy of the tech construction funds, and when I get to that page, I'll explain what I corrected. But we did have a prior month's balance of $23.2 million, an ending balance January 31st, 2023 of $28.9 million. This is broken down by fund on the next page. General fund, $16.9 million. Federal projects, $4.9 million. EIA fund, $6.2 million. Other state restricted funds, $1.2 million, for an ending balance January 2023 of $28.9 million. And on the next page, we have January 31st balance of for tech construction funds of $473,000. Under the January accounts payable, if you'll follow through to the end, it shows $47.40 for the total. That should be $31,857.43. The total balance is correct, but the number did not foot correctly all the way across to the right. So I gave you a corrected sheet for that. I did not notice it until we had already sent out the packets. Those expenditures of $31,857 are for additional cameras and installation at Pomeroy Garmany for $2,157 and an ADA ramp improvement at Reuben Elementary for $29,700. The following pages are our general fund revenue and expenditure reports, and I'll answer any questions that you have at this time.
Did you say 29,000
Yes, sir,
for a handicap ramp?
I did.
I need to come ride on that. My goodness.
Just out of notice on page 1, line 223, and then on page 2, I think it's line 254, we see the ideal remaining percent is 41%. Those two lines are a good bit lower. Is that?
We just have large encumbrances that are already encumbered for purchases in those two areas. That's pretty typical for this time. Any other questions? Okay. Just a reminder that we do have our first budget work session on April the 17th. We have already had our meetings with our principals and directors, and we'll be going through those and working on our presentation, or at least our first crack at it for the first work session in April. Hopefully, I'll have a little bit of revenue information at that time. Right now, I have no idea. I mean, I really do not have any idea. Other than what they're planning to put into the line, I have no idea how that will shake out among districts. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Earl, Student Services.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Presley. I have a few updates for you related to student attendance, school climate data, as well as McKinney Vento grant for School District of Newberry County. On your first page, school level truancy report, this is as of February 22, 2023. It includes the number of students enrolled as well as the number of students that are truant at the elementary, middle, and each high school listed. The total enrollment for each school is listed on the right-hand side. Towards the middle is the number of truant students, and then at the very bottom, those two columns are reflective of the total number of students in each one of those columns. Our district's current truancy rate is right at about 12%, and that information is also listed towards the bottom of the page for your viewing. On your next page, and in your document, titled K-12 students enrolled at Newberry Alternative School, as well as our Eden School program as of February 22nd. The total at the bottom of that column is listed for the total enrollment at this point in time. Reflecting this chart also are the students that are enrolled for each school at the elementary, middle, and high school level. On your third page, titled Hearing Office Recommendations per Month as of February 22nd. They have the total at the bottom of the page for our school district, as well as for each month, the number of students that have been enrolled. Please note for the month of December, that number listed on your chart is 21. For some reason, the data pulled over did not pull in additional students, so that number should be 22 for the month of December and not 21. On your next page, should be your final page, student level hearing office recommendations and suspensions. This is reported once again as of February the 22nd. It reflects each school, high school, middle, and elementary, the number of students that have been recommended to the hearing office, as well as the number of suspensions for each school. Off to the right-hand side of the column, you can see that information reflected as well. In terms of any of the information data I've reported on these 4 pages, does anyone have any questions for me?
Suspensions does not mean, hearing office does not hear suspensions, they just hear expulsions, right?
That's correct.
And this says it does include in-school suspension too.
It does not include incidents.
Does not.
It's all out-of-school suspension, yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Earl, I realize that I may be out of touch and Pollyanna-ish, but I noticed that elementary school rates are as high as middle and high school rates on these things. Is that a post-COVID norm that we've got to deal with? Or,
Talking about truancy.
yeah, or both truancy and suspensions?
That's a very much a case-by-case scenario. I would say after COVID, that has had an effect on that. I think if my memory serves correctly with our years, I think pretty much our third grade population was our population of students, I believe, that when COVID first hit were in kindergarten. So I think that that has an effect on that family-wise in terms of that. We've been reaching out to families going to get students to assist them with coming to school and encouraging them. There are some situations where students are truant and they have not utilized their parent notes. So when we run into those and we have truancy hearings at the district level, we try to encourage the parents to be sure they're getting the parent notes, and even sometimes doctor's excuses have not been submitted as well. So sometimes those things play a factor in that. It's not just that the student's staying at home for particular reasons. We've had a few families where parents have just moved into the area and they don't have a lot of support and they're dealing with health issues. So sometimes those have an effect on students attending school as well.
I would say, Mr. Gray, that, from everything I'm reading on all the different types of educational websites, that Newberry County isn't alone in that chronic absenteeism seems to be a national crisis that's happening.
There are not any questions. I would like to speak on a positive note. Not that all the information was not positive. One positive note I want to speak on is the Student Services Department has worked extremely hard, the members of the department, in maintaining vigilance and achieving a McKinney-Vento grant in the tune of a little over $47,000. It's actually closer to $48,000 versus $47,000. We're looking forward to implementing that over the next few months. One of our focuses is going to be instructional department, working with Dr. Carey and her team in terms of getting our summer reading with these students that qualify and their families. And we're going to try to look at centering some type of summer week or potentially 2 weeks, depending upon the funding that we dedicate to it, to have our students complete their summer reading as well as try to get an early grade for the classes going into the next school year, and also trying to have some type of field experience planned for those students as well. So we have all that lined up and planned. We're trying to get the personnel and moving forward with that. The grant is also going to be looking forward to providing additional professional development for our teachers and staff members to heighten their awareness in terms of some of the things that go on with our families and make sure they're aware of those things so they can try to assist as best as possible in the classroom, also with getting our students into school. And also on top of that, we're going to look at putting out flyers and things throughout our community, because sometimes our families just are not aware of the resources that they have, so we want to make sure that they're aware of those things and take advantage of them as best as they can so they can service their students to help them to be successful. This is pretty much our most vulnerable student population in our district, so we're trying to reach out and do as much as we can. In a few years, there's going to be a larger grant we're going to try to apply for as well. So we're kind of looking at this as a precursor to try to get more grant funding to assist our students as well.
So this program is for students that have had to utilize or been referred to student services?
Well, they're not necessarily referred to us through the registration process. What we'll find out some families when they're filling out completing the paperwork with some of the addresses they're giving us, we'll be able to ask them questions, and even schools will send them to our office so we can ask additional questions, try to find out exactly if they qualify for the additional resources.
How much
So
is
what
this
is that
grant?
qualification?
It's right at 47,000, I think 780.
And you're going to do all that with $47,000?
As much as we can, we are. That's correct. Now, we are also partnering along with the instructional department with using Title I funding for some of the things that we're doing, so it's in conjunction with some of those things. And a lot of community resources that we have to come along with it as well, donating books, book bags, and things, that's going to also contribute to this. So try not to overlap too many services, but we want to maximize as much as possible what we do put in place.
Mr. Earl, isn't the McKinney-Vento Act dealing with basically children that are classified as homeless?
That's correct, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
that's what I thought.
How many homeless students do we have in Newberry County right now, at the last time you looked?
Roughly right at about 100. I have not broken that down in terms of the number of families versus the number of students. So you may, obviously one household may have 2 to 3 students. But I can't remember exactly how that number is broken out, but I know 100. I believe it's 100 students, but I would like to go back and verify that for sure. But
Was there any involvement with the school district in the point in time count?
I'm sorry, the what?
The point in time count?
Not that I'm aware of, sir.
Okay. What's the definition of homeless?
That's what I was fixing to ask.
McKinney-Vento.
It's vague.
So really what we look at is that any student and family that does not have established residency, okay? Sometimes we have students in hotels or different scenarios like that, but if they don't have an established residency on their own, then that's what we categorize that. Now, sometimes they may be living with a family member, something in transition, so those things are taken into consideration as well. So we have pretty much a line of questions that we look to identify these students. So sometimes, even though they may be staying with a family member, that does not mean they're homeless, because that is, they may be staying with a grandfather or something along those lines. Any other questions?
I want to go back to the alternatives program. I think in the past, you've told us we've had 70 slots.
Yes, sir.
And I've talked to Mr. Presley as well as you, and I want to see some kind of streamlining of the process, because I feel like if the process is good, the students will get a better result. I want to make sure that we are utilizing our alternative school to its fullest potential. If a child's not successful academically or behaviorally, we need to make sure we've got a process in place to help them there, because if they're not successful there, they're not going to be successful when we send them back. And I really want to see a streamlined process and a group approach as to when a child is eligible to go back to home schools.
There,
I would ditto that.
and there is a process in place in terms of when students do return. That is spelled out by Ms. Sips, and she communicates that to the student and family during the intake process. And there's an understanding that the students have that if there are certain criteria that they do not meet, they will not be allowed back into the school. Unfortunately, we do have some circumstances where students are coming to us not being very successful academically.
Right.
And so we do the best we can in terms of them being after alternative school to assess them, with our counseling and other things that we're doing. So we try to make sure, at least, in terms of when they come, the expectation is that they are going to improve, but we still look at, before they come to us, where they are in terms of trying to address it as well.
Well, I think sending them back prematurely doesn't help that child or the children in the homeschool. And that's my belief, and I know that through the IEP process, we have to do things a little bit differently, but I would love to see a committee that make the decision, include the homeschool, your office, and the NOS folks, before they go back. And if they're not successful behaviorally or academically, we need to figure it out. If we've got 70 slots and we've got 40 couple kids, we've got plenty of work to do. And I'm sure there's kids that need those services. And if we're not going to utilize it to its fullest potential, maybe we need to change what we're doing.
And to add to that point in terms of enrollment, students are assigned to the alternative school through the hearing office process. So sometimes they may come to the hearing office, but it may not necessarily be an automatic alternative school placement of that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
45 bodies there, do we have some that might be homebound or learning virtually that would be under the alternative school umbrella?
Yes, so right now we do have 3 students currently. They're doing with that at the middle level, and I believe it's 2 at the high school level. They fall to that category of what you're saying.
So is it 45 plus 5 or 45 minus 5?
Oh, that is already included in the number of those students.
They're in there, okay.
Now, we do have, we have some students that are already in transition as well. I did not reflect those numbers in this number because those are not hard numbers as of yet, but there are some students that transition as well.
Transition to where?
Going into alternative school. They have not set up their intake meeting, or they just got their hearing results to set up that.
And the other thing is, y'all worked real hard on the code of conduct, and I think we need to make sure we use that code of conduct as a measure of the behavioral severity before they go back to the homeschool. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, I'd second on that because, everybody talks about teacher salaries and teacher shortages. And, the thing that I keep hearing over and over from a lot of our teachers, especially when it gets up to the middle school and high school level, the discipline issues. And, that seems to be a big thing where, teachers just, they, especially if they have a child who is maybe gets sent to the alternative school, he's there for, or she, for a short time, they get sent back, and then they go back and forth. It's not only, to me, not productive for the child that's being sent there, but, you're placing that child in a classroom where, maybe 15, 20, whatever, other kids aren't able to learn. And so we've got to do the best that we can to make school conducive to learning.
And the majority of our students, well, all of the students, they receive at least a 4 to 5 day placement, and there have not been any students sent back that have not
Right.
fulfilled the time frame. If anything, time because the criteria has not been met at the placement. So.
Right. Well, we just need to make sure none slip through the crack.
Right, I agree.
Again, it needs to be a process with a lot of eyes on it. That's my opinion.
Any questions?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Ross?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Presley, this evening I'd like to come and give you a custodial update report. And I also want to apologize for a typo on that. These grades are for January, right above the box where the grade levels are. I keep removing November, but that little pesky November gets back in there every time. But this report is for the January report cards. Report cards come in, their averages was listed in those letter grades. Classrooms and restrooms continue to be our lowest scoring areas. All categories are tracking at about the same as they did last month. So we're not backing up, but we're not getting much better either, so. Some of the concerns or comments that was left on that January report card from a few of the schools. No concerns, custodians doing a good job. We have a plan in place to strip and wax foyers over spring break. A reminder is given almost daily to sweep up the classrooms. We are down to one custodian again, but I think more are coming. We do have that school fully staffed now. This again was from the beginning of the month. And there's a need there needs to be a focus on cleaning windows and mirrors. Now, I did have a meeting with the HES upper management on the 8th and discussed with them some of their shortcomings as it involves their staffing numbers. They're advertising the positions that we have. They've indicated that the salary range is probably the thing that's hurting them the most. And so they're continuing to look for people that can get through the process and work for us in our schools. But I really don't have anything else to share with you other than that they are putting in the effort to get staff. But they're here for a few days sometimes, and then they're no-shows from there. So it's always going to be that, but I've just never experienced it at this level before, not being able to hang on to any employees.
So what leverage or what options would the school district have? Could we look at that contract and go with them and say, hey, we're willing to bump up something and allow you to raise your salary schedule?
That would definitely be something I would like to go back to them and talk to them about.
And so is this company based on, since you've been policing them for the last few months, we don't see a great deal of improvement up and down.
Right.
Do you think they're the company to stick with if we're going to do that, or do you have maybe somebody waiting in the wings that we can do that?
I don't. I've actually got a few meetings scheduled in the next couple of weeks with some other providers, which I'm going to be asking some questions. What their labor rates are, for one thing.
Okay.
And just in discussing that with other districts our size that have a leased out or a subcontractor coming in to provide these services, we are much lower than the average out there as far as our daily rate goes. So I think there's a little bit that plays into it.
Where are the cafeterias at on this list?
They're just included in the overall score of the school. You want me to add that category to the report card?
Well, I visited one of our cafeterias this week and it was not clean.
Okay.
It wasn't even a C+.
Okay. I can definitely add that to the report card.
Yeah, I would.
Got it. All right, moving along. I've also got for information in your packet for a work order report for January of '23. I streamlined this a little bit and just went overall. So, 467 work orders complete or closed. We've got 55 that are carryovers, if you will. They're still in the queue as unassigned work orders for one reason or another. That's not an uncommon number, but they could have come in on the last couple of days of the month, and they just got carried over into January. We do have a few parts on order, and we do have a couple of work in progress. So overall, it seems like a good balance there. I think when I looked last, there was about 250 open work orders for one instance or another. Some of those were for painting or floor repair or some things that we would have to schedule somebody else in to handle.
What's the difference between a closed work order and a completed work order?
There is no difference. I'm trying to get rid of the lesser of those. It should be, in my opinion, it should be a completed work order and not a closed work order.
I had the same question, Ms. Shane.
But in their template, it's a boilerplate template that everybody uses, and that's one of the categories that's in there. I've just got a few mechanics that'll click on that one instead of doing a complete. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, members of the board, and those in attendance with us this evening. I only have a few highlights that I would like to cover this evening. The first is this past weekend, I had an opportunity to attend the Palmetto State Literacy Conference and had an opportunity to speak with a fine group of educators. Newberry County Schools was represented extremely well. We had several of our teachers presenting to other educators, not just from within the state of South Carolina, but from other states as well. Total, they had 985 attendees at this conference. So I just wanted to recognize all of our educators that participated. I see some folks in the audience that I saw there over the weekend, and just recognize that Newberry County Schools is a great school district, and we're sharing some of our great ideas with other educators around the state. So let's give them a round of applause in their We also have our first district performance of The Lion King that will be taking place at the Ritz Theater on March 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And we have over 160 of our students that will be performing in that.
Dates again.
March 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. I know the 19th is a matinee. At what time is that, Dr. Carey?
I believe 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock, and the rest of the performances,
They'll be around 7 p.m.
okay.
We'll firm that time up for you.
Yeah, that's what it
Thank
says
you.
out on the marquee, 7 p.m.
And I think it warrants recognition. Our Newberry Middle School boys basketball team ended up being the Lex 10 South champions. And I just wanted to recognize that basketball team, the members of that team, and those coaches that work so hard with those young men. And I see we have Mr. Reed here. I guess he's representing Newberry Middle. Let's give that school a round of applause.
I'm assuming they would be coming before us at some point.
It's not technically a state championship, so that's why I have
We can
to.
recognize whatever we want.
That's right.
And last but certainly not least, and we'll definitely consider that, Mr. Ham, we have to look at the policy, okay? The school board, South Carolina School Board Association, we all attended most of us attended that annual convention, sat through several informational workshops, and just to bring back some information so that, we can better serve our students, our teachers, and all of our employees within the district. So those conclude my highlights for this evening, Madam Chair, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
I have some comments from the convention. Is anyone else?
I do too.
I don't have a comment, but I want to go back and tag on his acknowledging the boys' basketball team at Newberry Middle School. The girls' basketball team at Mid Carolina High School won all region, and it's the first time in 17 years. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Cooper, I think my daughter might have been on that team that won the region then. And so it was hard for her to believe it had been that many years already. So I'd like to give a big, and I don't know if this is still the language that you use, but a big shout out to Mid Carolina High School girls basketball varsity.
Give them a hand.
Go ahead, give them a hand.
Well, there was a gentleman, and I cannot remember, I should have written it down when I wrote his quote from another school district, school board, but he made a comment that I was so busy writing down what he was saying that I didn't put his name. But when we're talking about all this, Ms. Lake was giving us legislative updates, and we all know about the voucher bill and all the considerations going on in Columbia and all the conversation in our nation about public schools, that I just this comment just really was like, wow to me, that whether someone in a community chooses to homeschool their child or put their child in a private school or public school, as a community as a whole, we need to always remember the student outcomes are a reflection of the investment from their community. And then their educational success of those very students is going to be the future of the community. So to me, it's like, yeah, we got to remember that. What we put into our children, our students, as a community, I just hope that everyone in the community keeps that in their mind. That is the future of your community. And then I didn't say anything, Mr. Earl, when you were up there, but I went to a breakout session, and it was put on by Horry County School District. And they have their alternative school. Of course, it's much larger than ours. I mean, it's a district with like 58,000 students or something. So, but anyway, they don't call it an alternative school. They've given it a name. They actually call it the SOAR Academy. And SOAR stands for Shine, Own, After, Return. And that was something, I know Ms. Reeder and I talked about it afterwards, that I would like for us maybe here in Newberry to think about, instead of alternative school, which can sort of have that negative connotation, that a lot of those students that are there are some negative circumstances probably in their lives that helped contribute to them needing to be there to start with. So just a positive name, I thought that was like, well, yeah. And we may do something similar, they have a point system. And so when the student is placed there, the student and their parent or guardian, they know to return to your home school, you've got to have this many points. And their points, they get a point every day for being at school, for attendance and not being tardy. They get a point for behavior. And bottom line, their point for behavior, if during that school day, the teacher has to deal with little Sally or little Johnny in any behavior way, you don't get the point for that day. So you've got to be on your best behavior to get that point. And that way, it's the same across the board, Mr. Ham, for whoever's there. But they made a comment that I've got with my little highlighter that I just thought, oh my goodness. When they go, we all want to be able to help them, and we all want them back at their home school. I mean, I do, Mr. Ham.
I do too.
I mean, you know.
When they're ready.
But this comment just really was like, wow. It said, one of their goals at their SOAR Academy, of course, is to reduce what they call repeat assignments. You don't want little Johnny to have to go there in the 6th grade and then again in the 7th and again in the 8th. You don't want those repeat assignments, because what they have found is those students that get into those repeat assignments, they call that the school to prison avenue. That is what they see if you really track those young people. And I thought, whoa, so sending them back too soon, Mr. Ham, is not helping that student, which is what we want to do. That's what alternative programs were put in there to do. So I do think we need to monitor that very closely. We don't want to keep them any longer than they need to be there, but at the same time, if they're not ready to go back, and as it said, shine, own, after return, we may not be helping that child either, as well as the classmates that they're going to join.
That's right. I thought we had some excellent speakers. I think the best one of the weekend was on Sunday morning. I did find out some bad news from Miss Connie down there. She, they broke us out into groups, and Miss Connie ended up in my group. So I'm not sure what that says, Miss Connie, but we'll get through it. But we had like I said, we had the three main speakers were head and shoulders above a lot of the speakers that we've had in the past, but the one that stuck with me was the Marine, highly decorated Marine, spoke to us on Saturday, and I was just really impressed with him.
going to piggyback a little bit. Ms. Metz took everything I was going to say about the SOAR program, because I was really impressed with that too. And again, I know we can't compete with a school district that's got 45,000 kids in it. But, you know, we could look at it and figure out how maybe we could implement it to fit our district. Because it did have some good points in there, you know, in the point system and how you earn points. But, you know, if you don't do certain things, they subtract points too. So it's kind of, you know, up to the student. And it gives the student some responsibility too, a little bit more than, you know, just going in and, you know, either getting on the computer, completing assignments or, you know, whatever. It helps them own it a little bit. And then on the Sunday morning one that Mr. Ham alluded to, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase or sum it up for me, but what it did is it kind of, took a survey and it put you in different categories of what your personality traits were like. And, you know, for me, it was just that constant reminder that each one of us, you know, kind of has a piece of the puzzle. And, you know, we all may see differently, and we all may have different ways of getting to point A, but it doesn't necessarily make everybody wrong, and in which I feel like in our school district, the school board and teachers, that we all want to end up in the same place, and we want our kids to be educated, and we want them to have a good experience when they're at school. And so sometimes we have to take into consideration that, you know, if somebody has an opposing view, that you're still on the same team and that you still are all working towards the same goal.
Anybody else? All right. If there's no further business, meeting is adjourned.